But were it even possible to obtain a miraculous power in order to vindicate a lie, that power would not make a rational being credit any doctrine or precept which dishonors God. For instance, a miracle could not make men believe that the Almighty is the author of sin, much less, with the language of the Quran, however eloquent, support his divinity, while every sentence of it is almost an open insult to the majesty of heaven and earth by removing the limits to God and the idea that, that there's the favoring. But the truth is, he did not wish to conceal it, since a part of it, at least, was to compose the part of the Quran, no doubt with Muhammad's consent and approbation, after he came to understand it. Whenever any mention is made of rites and ceremonies, whether to be espoused or rejected, the mysterious jargon of the Talmud discovers to the discerning mind who was its principal coadjutor, without the aid of some who better understood the Supreme Being than an egregiously ignorant man born and brought up in an idolatrous country. The Quran could not have even the despicable merit of mingling this doctrine with so much wickedness. Well, by wickedness is not, removing the tribal stuff and the excess strictness that was built on upon things. It is a systematical vindication of getting back your property that's been stolen, accepting your humanity, and self-defense. Not only sanctioned by the life of its author, but sincerely supported by the claim of authority of God himself, which Mohammed says he received from the angel Gabriel. We do not suppose that it was material to Mohammed what he taught, provided his countrymen could be brought to believe its divine origin. So it's not so much that he taught, as that he claimed, and the Bible does not say that there will never be a prophet again. It actually supports that there would be. That last line in the book of Revelations, well, the book of Revelations was written the same decade as John, and there was continued edits in the Bible, and after that, of that which was previously written, and whether from God or from those considered to be God, the legality of the means by which he proposed to enforce its observation, and the undoubted equity of his claim to supreme dominion, both in things secular and religious. True indeed, he had much opposition to expect from Jews and Christians in the infancy of a scheme of which we have already taken notice, and therefore it was a piece of consummate policy, for which he was certainly indebted to the plotting head of Abdallah to admit into his system some peculiar leading doctrine which both parties believed. We cannot allow that Arabian divinity taught men such ideas of God as a Jew could communicate, and which, it must be confessed, abound in the Quran, notwithstanding that it makes the Almighty to countenance and see. So much of this is associated with prejudice against the Arab, which, although there were issues going on in Arabia at the time, doesn't mean that the prophets come to correct them, not support them in those things. But for the most part, it's not like they're spending all their time raping and robbing and killing and stuff like this. That no matter how bad it gets, that's not the main thing. It can overshadow everything, but idolatry is incompatible with such ideas, for when worship is divided among 1,000 deities, the mind can have no such exalted conceptions of any individual. Well, what about the Christian idea of Godhead and saints and other things? Are exalted ideas, but they're limited, like you find in the Bible. This was the case with the Greeks and the Romans. Under the fictitious characters of Jupiter, the greatest authors would have us to perceive the Almighty God, the independent ruler of the universe, but as Jupiter was, a thief, a whoremonger, and an adulterer, a scandal even to mankind. And as he died and was buried, we should soon credit the Quran as adopt such a sentiment. Again, Islam does not allow for theft, sex outside of marriage, or the encouragement, or even the leading up to things. If you compare the Bible and the Quran in terms of preventing the major sins, it really lays forth the ground, doesn't it? That the Quran does it to a greater extent. You can't find an evil or ignorance that's not condemned in some way by the Quran. But the Bible kind of doesn't have guidance on all issues if you're going to be objective about it. Are subjective about it, really, unless you're going to stretch things and pretend connections that aren't there even in subject categories. Mohammed then, by giving the unity of God a place in his Bible, took off a considerable part of that horror at his religion, which must otherwise have been felt by the Christians and the Jews. It was thus easier for him to make proselytes of people so torn to pieces by dissension as the Eastern churches of the Christians then were, many of whose members chimed in with his allusions, and his own countrymen, being without any religion properly so called, were more likely to espouse opinions which offered no violence to their passions. See, the condemnation of Islam is always around the desires of certain individuals not being the same. It was also by a grand maneuver for making converts of the Jews who could by no means stomach the doctrine of Trinity. If any system so completely could bid fair to the suit, the palates of the description of men at the period when, in the country where the scene was laid, that of Mohammed was undoubtedly the system. Yet, we have seen that the first 13 years of his mission were spent to little purpose, spreading beliefs more than social behavior, you could say. Considering how he labored and the arts he employed, for it could not bear the touchstone of reason and argument, this made him finally resolve to adopt the method already taken notice of. Well, it was full of ethics, but it was more about the spiritual side, and at which he so faithfully used for the last 10 years of his life to give speedy and extensive circulation to his opinions by the invincible logic of the sword. Well, again, when he took up the sword, there was never any forced conversion, and he stopped his community from doing stuff. Nay, it is still customary with the Islamic preachers to deliver their discourses to the people with the sword by their side, not only as an expressive of the sublime manner in which that religion was first propagated, but as evincing also what every man has to expect if he ventures to dispute its divinity or recede from its defense.